A word from our sponsors. What do the world's largest demand-side platforms have in common? They're effective, but they require large annual contracts and spend minimums. With AdLib, growing agencies get a single platform that connects to every top global DSP with no contracts, no spend minimums, and G2's #1 ranked support. That means access to the entire universe of TV, digital out-of-home, audio, display, video, and native without a hassle and with no blind spots. It's incredibly easy to use. Plus, it can automate most of the work your team spends hours a day doing manually. Get the most powerful media buying technology without the barriers to entry. Check out AdLib at getadlib.com. Again, that's GETADLIB.com. Welcome to the AdTechGod Pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTechGod. Welcome to today's episode of the AdTechGod Pod, where we meet some of the ad operations experts of our industry. Today's guest is Kevin Salguero. Kevin is the Director of Programmatic Operations at Univision, where his background in ad operations and programmatic advertising has been instrumental in driving the company's operational success. Kevin brings a wealth of experience to the table, having previously worked at Rhythm One, now known as Nexon, Nexstar Digital, and T-Mobile. His diverse background across these prominent companies has equipped him with a deep understanding of ad operations, specifically in the video and CTV space. I'm excited to dive into Kevin's journey, explore his insights, and learn more about the future of ad operations and connected TV. Kevin, welcome to the AdTechGod Pod.
Hey, ATG. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, thanks for being on. I really appreciate you and Univision accepting the invitation, so thanks for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's honestly an honor to be on the podcast, and I've been a fan of what you've been doing. So when the invitation hit my inbox, I was more than happy to get approvals and jump on here.
And thank you to Jeremy also, who I know is aware of this. So thank you, Jeremy, for having him here.
Absolutely. Shout out Jeremy Varner.
Kevin, I start the podcast the same way with every guest. I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey and how you got to Univision. I would love to hear that and give me some background as to how you started leading programmatic operations where you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, like most people's journey, go to school, go to college, and trying to figure out what you want to do with your career. Mine pointed me towards marketing. So I was really into the idea of being able to communicate messages effectively and reach target audiences and things like that. So I was doing that for a bit at an environmental company, really kind of low down the totem pole outside of college. A family friend, a good friend of my brother's, had an opportunity at a startup, basically an ad network, where I learned the difference between the marketing side of the advertising space and the advertising side, being on the side that monetizes these campaigns. So, I switched from the marketing side to the advertising side, and that really catapulted my career. I was lucky to be at a startup where I had opportunity to kind of be in a sandbox and learn some lessons the hard way, go into systems, pull levers to understand how to set up a VAST tag, how to set up a VPay tag, working with different publishers and advertisers, really kind of an opportunity to learn the ecosystem from A to Z. So from the pub side, how to traffic a tag in there, ad stack, setting it up for success in your own ad stack. On the flip side, working with sales or the SSP partners and integrating them into your ad server, and then how to optimize their demand against the available supply. So it was really, at the time, just having the opportunity to kind of be able to tinker and the space to kind of rise to the occasion of just learning these different nuances within the early days of programmatic advertising for videos.
I've had a couple ad operations people on the podcast. I had Jared Woliczynski from Paramount. I recently had CJ Leonard, who says hi, by the way, on the podcast as well. And one of the common themes with everyone is, it's really easy to, I guess, understand conceptually how the industry works. It's something very different to understand the nuances and the minor, minutiae of changes that could happen by you pulling one lever or changing one setting. So I'd love to hear how, your experience across the 2 or 3 companies you've worked at, including, Rhythm One, which is now Nexon and Nexstar, has kind of helped you get to the point that you're at today, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, looking at a lucid chart of the industry and how things flow, it's a good overview, but definitely being able to pull levers helps. And so, yeah, I can dive into my time at Rhythm One, now Nexon. Them being an SSP and owning a DSP gave me a lot of insight into how SSPs essentially function, right? And what their goals are. They're also optimizing for revenue. And so working at a small publisher or network and, trying to chase down these SSPs early on, I was like, well, I don't understand. Why don't they want to work with everybody to get as much scale as possible, right? But from the SSP's perspective, they're really trying to optimize towards revenue. And a lot of the times they don't own their servers. So they have to be really weary of like QPS, right? So it all comes down to margin, as you know. And so getting to work on the pub dev team at Nexon was really eye-opening in terms of being on the other side of the fence and really just trying to prioritize premium publishers, get them onboarded and maximize the amount of campaigns that went to those partners as opposed to, aggregators. And at the time, I think it was around 2019, post Wine Ops world where aggregators were kind of frowned upon. And that's putting it lightly, So it was interesting being on the other side of that and the reasons why and looking at ad verification, making sure that the clients that the SSP brought to the table were happy at the end of the day. Because the publishers is very important, or, aggregators, and they provide a value. But at the end of the day, if the client's needs are not met, then they'll take those budgets and go to another SSP or DSP, right? Or whatever full stack solution is out there. Because, nowadays there's SSP and DSPs are kind of merging into one. But at the time, they were 2 separate things. So pretty interesting.
Do you feel like, because you kind of boomeranged, you went from ad operations to biz dev back to ad operations, leading at Univision. Did you feel like the ad ops background helped you a lot with the biz dev piece? Like, were you able to speak the same language and deliver the value of what the SSP was bringing to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, from an ad operations perspective, I understood what it took to integrate an SSP. And when I was at Nexon, so if you wanted a Spring Serve integration, that was, one line of ads TXT and one account. And then if you needed a APS or an A9 integration, that's different paperwork and a different ads TXT line. And if you wanted an OB integration, so I really had to figure out or understand from the publisher's perspective, what's their preferred avenue. And then once I had a solid understanding of that, I could go back to my team internally and say, hey, we're prioritizing this contract over the others because they're pushing most of their inventory via this channel. Instead of trying to get them to do all the integrations all at once, I just did it in order of the priority that the publisher was looking to integrate on and where the biggest opportunity was. So I would definitely say having an ad ops background made closing deals a lot easier.
Speaking of, their priorities and what publishers are looking for and their preferred, integrations of choice, where do you think the industry's heading in terms of connected TV, OTT? What are you seeing from a publisher's perspective, the direction we're heading in today?
I think that it's kind of the same direction that it's always been going, which is as close to the publisher as possible. I think in the last couple of years, especially with the announcement of like Trade Desk and other DSPs, SPO efforts, it's become abundantly clear that the closer the publisher is to the budgets, the better for the publisher and the advertiser. I think where the downfall is there is all the tech intermediaries that have kind of built things around trying to provide value, right? So like, what is an SSP? It's a supply side platform. They build tools specifically for publishers. And then the DSP, same thing, but for the advertiser, demand side platform. Bells and whistles built to cater to the needs of the advertisers, right? And so I think the goal of tying those two together has always been known. I think in the last couple of years specifically, we've seen the mergers and acquisitions to kind of prove that. But I think it'll continue to happen until eventually SSP and DSP, those terms go away and some omni-channel or, omni-stack platform kind of prevails.
It's funny. I feel like I talk to some people and they seem to be in support of the combination of SSPs and DSPs or creating a network in essence. I, for one, am not a huge fan. I don't think I have been. I don't necessarily like it. I think the protections in place for a publisher stand more with an SSP and the protections in place for a marketer stand more with a DSP. It'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. I think, for the most part, a lot of those acquisitions are now complete and done. We'll see whether there's incremental revenue brought to publishers by these acquisitions or mergers. But it'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out over the next, 12, 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear your point on maybe not liking the idea of the combination of the two, but I think that, as long as the tools are available for both sides and that it's not a monopoly where it's one company that you go to, it should be okay. Like if there's 3 or 4 different ones to choose from, I think that's the best outcome for the future. If it ends up being the supply side and the demand side is one platform and it's really one person in market offering this that monopolizes everything, then I think the industry's in some big trouble.
Yeah, I think we kind of already have one of those out there without naming names. And it seems like that didn't work to the benefit of the ecosystem. We'll see how that particular situation pans out as lawmakers go into place and regulation goes into place. But we'll see how that's broken up. I'm for one, I just like having it separate. I think it's a word from our sponsors. Whether or not Google ever decides to deprecate cookies, they continue to loom over us, putting future revenue growth in doubt. LiveIntent's Hero, Helping Identity Reveal Opportunity, offers a solution by transforming non-addressable audiences into addressable inventory using first-party data. Hero is scalable, interoperable, and integrated with major industry players, providing a robust framework for navigating the post-cookie era. See how Hero can help you quickly unlock your inventory at LiveIntent/Hero. That's LiveIntent/HIRO. Maybe not as transparent or maybe more transparent to everybody on each side of where the margins are being made, but I would love for that divide to remain in place. But who am I? I don't make those decisions. We'll see where it goes.
I mean, you're ATG. You can influence the masses. I think open dialogue with this is absolutely needed, right?
We're trying. I feel like some people hate me for saying that, and other people are like, yes, keep going. We'll see where it goes. I mean, obviously, it's something that is thought about quite a bit and discussed quite a bit. I get it. Like, I really do. I get that SSPs need to show growth. I get that their margins are being reduced. I get that DSPs need to show growth. There's only so many marketers they can onboard with substantial budgets. And the way to make those margins and keep, shareholders happy is margin and unique demand or unique supply. So, but we'll see where it all heads. I mean, I'm watching just as closely, I think, as everybody else to see what happens. Kevin, what do you think in your time working in advertising, in ad tech, has been like the biggest highlight or milestone for your career?
There's probably a couple that come to mind. I was just getting, I would say, really good at what I do around the time of the pandemic. So I had left Nexon to join Nexstar Digital, actually running or helping managing publishers on the Liquid platform that they had acquired. I would say, it wasn't a long tenure because of the pandemic, right? Everyone had mass layoffs. It was a hard time for a lot of people, but I would say maintaining my career trajectory while working remotely from home And I think I was very early on in doing so. And I got to shout out, T-Mobile for the opportunity because they're headquartered in Bellevue, in Washington. And, I had great conversations with them, got hired during the pandemic, and they looked at what I brought to the table, obviously the resume. And after a lengthy interview process, I ended up getting the opportunity to bring my talents there. And it was really great, right? It was a solid over 2 years of just showing what we can do from home, right? And that it doesn't actually impact performance. It actually, for me personally, increased performance because I could, I didn't have to lose time commuting. So waking up 2 hours early, 1 hour to get ready and then an hour commute, and then you work your 8 hours and then you have another hour commute, right? All those things add to, I think, employee fatigue. And so as far as milestones go, it's not like a promotion or anything like that. But I think for me personally, having a track record of success with remote work is massive for me. I'm out in Southern California in a great neighborhood, good schools for my family. And, having that track record of success with remote work gave me the opportunity at Univision to lead a team primarily on the East Coast. My team is half in like Miami area and the other half is in New York. Having that track record, being able to grow in my career, lead teams from across the country effectively, I would say are the two big ones for me.
So obviously it sounds like you were impacted by the pandemic layoffs, which is never fun. And then you moved into T-Mobile, and then you moved into Univision, and you're saying now that you're leading a team. How have you found that transition? Is looking at your LinkedIn, how have you found that transition been for you career-wise, leading a team and being that mentor, I guess, that they're looking for?
That was probably, the jump from individual contributor to people manager. From my perspective, everyone wants it because that's the way to continue growing your career. I would say I'm lucky to have been given the opportunity to be able to build a team. Well, build and lead, I should say. And it's been interesting, right? There's definitely some learning curves because for the majority of my career, I was boots on the ground, right? Pulling levers, optimizing campaigns, partnerships, you name it, right? Everything that ad operations can do. And then really the big change is managing folks in the way that is most effective for them to receive information. So kind of like learning styles is the best example I'll give, right? There's a few different learning styles. And so having to adapt to the different learning styles of my team, I think was the biggest realization that I had to be able to continue, driving success of the greater team and the individuals on it. I told my team, like, I'm all about personal and professional development. And for, one person on my team, I'll approach a situation differently from, another person on my team, right? Based on their personality, how they learn, essentially how they execute their functions within the company. So I would say you didn't really ask for advice, ATG, but I would say the biggest learning curve for me was once you understand that everyone learns differently and does things differently and you can cater to that, you kind of figure out the secret sauce. Then I started to have some real success with the group.
It's actually one of my questions, Kevin. So one of them that I like to ask is, what advice would you give to people, starting out in ad tech or at various levels in ad tech? And I think your perspective of learning how to manage personalities, learning styles, knowledge levels, I think is important. I think that is a big part of being a leader and becoming a better leader is kind of recognizing those 3 or 4 elements and being able to use it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kevin, if you weren't working at Univision, if you weren't working in the industry in ad tech and advertising, what do you think you'd be doing?
That's a great question. I think there's 2 things that I could see myself doing, and one of them is a passion, and the other one is just related to my skill set. So I think if something happened, I can't do ad tech or ad tech goes away or I didn't get into it, I would try to coach. So I have said this to a few people, I think in the industry and just in general, but soccer saved my life. It kept me out of a lot of trouble as a kid. Really started at a very young age. And so I think it was about 4, started doing the AYSO thing like most kids. And then as I grew older, I jumped into club and more competitive leagues. In adolescence, we all go through things. And, I'm not going to sit here and say mine was terrible or the best or whatever, but, we all have our struggles. And thanks to soccer and some of the great coaching staff that I had at the clubs that I played at, I learned to channel negativity or raw emotion into something positive. And so for me, I'm all about paying that forward because, like I said, without it, I don't know where I would be or the type of person that I would be. So that's number one, is I would turn to coaching, whether it's club or volunteer, and develop into, a paying role of some kind. The other thing I see is, because I deal with a lot of data, looking at, campaigns, what can we do to optimize, and, pivot tables here and VLOOKUPs there. I've always been interested in trying to understand financial charts, right? I like the idea of, understanding it to the point where I can enter a few trades where, in the morning at market open and, make enough money to sign off after a couple hours, right? Maybe I'm daydreaming, but, I think being a trader is a tough road, but if you're good, you can make a great living and also have a lot of time to yourself, right? Because time is the most valuable asset. With my day to day and most others, our careers take up a lot of time, takes away time from your wife, your kids. And so as I'm getting a bit older, I'm recognizing how much more time I could have with the family. And so I'm always thinking of ways like, what's the way for financial freedom? What are some things I can do outside of my career path to set me up for success, to retire at a decent age or spend more time with the kids and go on vacations and just, once the time is gone, it's gone.
I get that. I get the financial freedom piece. I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I pivoted from, just kind of messing around online to trying to turn this into something great with Ari Paparo and Jeremy Bloom. And I get it. I think we all reach that point where at some point you go, okay, this is great. I get a paycheck every 2 weeks. This is wonderful. I live a good, comfortable life. I provide for my family, but like, what's next? Like at this pace, at this rate, will I ever reach the point of being able to be fully independent? And how the heck am I going to retire? 401k helps and it's fine. It's great, but it's not enough. And so I get it. I think looking at your independent freedom, financial freedom, and seeing that as something you eventually want to work towards totally makes sense because I'm right there with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, not to bring the economy or anything into this, but, it feels a lot harder than in the past. And so I think that's where the second answer to your question comes from, is the end goal is to spend time with the family. Unfortunately, everything is driven by money. So where's the intersect between the two for optimal balance? And I think that's the big question on not just our minds, but probably everybody's.
Awesome. Kevin, this actually brings us to the end of this episode of the podcast. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Jeremy Varner and Univision as well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, ATG. I appreciate being on, and it was a great combo and went very fast.
It goes very fast. Thank you, Kevin.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AdTechGod Pod, a podcast for the people, about the people that make AdTech great. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of AdTech. Don't miss out on our latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of AdTech innovation.